Good afternoon. My name is Joshua, and I'm going to be your presenter for today's webinar. I'd like to welcome everyone to our webinar event today. We're here to talk about the Statement Designer in the Church Windows Donations module. It's promptly 1 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to go ahead and get started here in just a minute or two. Just a few things before we go ahead and get started. The first and probably foremost important thing, hopefully everybody did see this in their, on the website or in their registration or confirmation email, that this webinar event is a deviation in terms of length of time from our standard 20-minute webinar format. Today's event is actually scheduled for 30 minutes just based on the complexity and the detail of the topic. So if you didn't see that or it wasn't clear to you, just be aware that the recording or a video of today's webinar will be made available on our website here within the next week or so on this topic, or this exact event will be recorded and put out there as a video for you to revisit later. So if you can't stay for the whole entire event, just be aware it will be out on our website here at some point. If you've not attended a webinar event before, use the little red arrow on the sidebar of your control panel there to minimize the control panel. Or if you've got a dual monitor set up, just drag that off to your second desktop just to get it out of the way. If you have questions for me, please type those into the questions portion of the control panel there. I will do my best to keep an eye on it and try to answer those questions. Please keep your questions topical, meaning on our statement designer today. We want to be able to answer other questions for you, but we construct these for the topic at hand, and oftentimes we're not prepared for questions for other portions of the software. Ultimately, of course, folks, if you have further questions and you're on support, please call us 800-533-5227. Our support technicians are available and happy to help. We're going to work till 1:30. No later than. If I don't manage to get to the questions till the end, please, I'll be happy to stick around and answer questions, so I won't be cutting things off right at 30 minutes. At 30 minutes, if at any point you've seen what you came to see during the webinar event, please feel free to use the file exit webinar option. Thank you so much in advance for attending. Finally, as we try to do with all of our webinars now, this particular webinar event is modeled after the Donations D106 workbook, pages 17 to 27. So if you have that workbook, those are the pages that I'm using as the basis for the presentation today. You can always purchase and order those workbooks online by going to www.churchwindows.com, and you can generally follow right along with the topic at hand. Okay? All right, so we're going to go into donations, and we're going to go to the donation statement. You can access the statement in one of two ways, of course, right here, down here at the bottom right of our portal screen, or you can go up to reports here at the very top, and in that reports menu, reports right here, we've got donation statement right below that. Let me get out my highlighter again. Here we go, right up here. So we can access the donation statements in a couple of different ways. When we click on donation statement, it does open up our step 1 screen. Now, we're not going to be spending any time on this today, but all I want to say really about the step 1 screen is virtually all of our reporting conventions now are in membership and donations is where these two screens are involved. Is step 1 is always who do we want to include on our report, what people do we want to see on it, versus step 2, which is what do we want to see on the report, or in this case, how do we want to see our statements laid out. Okay, so we're not going to go into this today. There are other videos out on our website about generating your statements. So we're just going to go ahead and click right on through that to step 2 to the step 2 screen. So here on our step 2 screen, of course, we do have our statement layout menu, and it defaults to windowed envelope. And then just to the right of that there, we should see, with my poorly drawn yellow arrow there, our statement designer button. And that's what we're going to use to access the statement designer that allows us to make the changes to the statement designer, it's the statement layout itself. Okay, this is basically, the statement designer function is a way for you to design a custom layout for your particular statement. Okay, and basically, and I'll walk through saving it and why and how that works, and saving it and accessing it. Okay. We do actually have a video existing on our website on the donation statements that was made 2 or 3 years ago. It's much longer. It's like an hour plus long on working. It does talk about how to be able to include people on your statements, and it does go through this statement designer function. We've really tried to just create a snapshot of just the statement designer function today, but you can look at a more kind of full webinar on who producing statements for your people and using a little bit of the designer there as well. Okay, on our website under the support center if you like. Yeah, on the bottom of page 17 there, it talks about from the opening screen. It again showed where you can access the donation statement itself. It talks about the step 1 and the step 2 screens briefly, who versus what. We're now on our step 2 screen. So in order to access that, the layout, we're going to click on the button labeled Statement Designer for the windowed envelope. We do have 2 or 3 other layouts that we build into the software, but the default is windowed envelope, and that's the one we're going to use today. But they all work and function exactly the same way from the designer perspective. At the top of page 18, it points to where that button can be accessed. So once we click on that, it might take a few seconds depending on your machine or your network. However, then it does open up our statement designer or report designer in the upper left here. Notice it says report designer in the upper left there. Hopefully everybody can see my arrow or my line. I like to mention that this custom or the designer function is available all over Church Windows now. Your check designer feature in accounting has a similar feel or functionality to it. The custom reporting options in membership, custom report options, uses the same conventions as this, in terms of the report designer, where you can literally create any report, not any report, but you can have an awful lot of flexibility with manipulating and changing and customizing your layouts of your reports or your checks or your accounts receivable invoices or statements. They all use this as their base. Okay, so when we click on the report designer and we're there's a lot here. We know, folks, it's a really busy screen, and we're going to try to offer some clarification on some of these functions and features in this. Okay, so the first thing that it talks about there on page 18 is the toolbox. And what it means by toolbox is in the upper right-hand corner here. We notice it says right up there, toolbox, right here. Okay, that's what that's talking about. It's talking about these features below it called standard controls and data controls. Okay, so standard controls are things that and things that can be placed on the statement wherever you want them to give them the information that you want, essentially. Okay, so an example of where we might, we've got a pointer option, we've got a label, logo image, horizontal line, a shape, page information, vertical line, and border. Okay, and one of the ones that we like to show on here is the logo or image, and we're going to come back to that here in just a minute. Okay, but one of the other things we definitely want to show here is we're not going to be able to get into all the detail of everything that's absolutely on this screen. So what we also want to show is that when you do hit the F1 key on your keyboard, it should be bringing up our help topic on the statement designer. So when it opens that, it opens up our donation statement designer. And it's a very detailed. Here's our topic, and this points out sections A, B, C, and D, which are detailed in the lower half of this page. So it shows section A, which in terms of the of where it is, you're talking about across the toolbars across the top of the screen, or B talks about the toolbox down here. So as we continue to scroll down, we do get into the bottom toolbars, and then ultimately into B for our standard tool control toolbox, and then ultimately into the C and the D for the designer preview and the zoom in and out, which isn't too terribly much on that. But if you're really interested in looking and seeing what all of those icons across the top are, you can access this from the help files. Now keep in mind we're on version 19.16.2. We hope you are too. If you're not, we would strongly recommend it in order to get the latest update on the help files. Okay? But you can access this and print this from the help files at any time if you wish. Okay, and I would recommend it, at least to give yourself something to kind of reference back to so you don't have to keep toggling back and forth between the help files. You can print this page, print these help topics. All right, so let's go ahead and close out of our help file here and get back to our statement designer topic. Okay, so simply to move an item onto the statement, you generally click on the item. So like in this case, we're going to do a logo or an image, a picture essentially. So if I hover over that on the right, I hold down my left mouse button and I drag it and I drop it right there where I want it on my statement. Okay? It's a drag and drop function essentially, and that's true for all of them, whether it's under the standard controls or the data controls. Only way to get it onto the actual layout itself is to drag and drop. Okay? To remove an item from the layout if you don't want it, there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can highlight it, and you can right-click on it, and delete is an option in the list. Or the other option, as we like to say, as I like to point out, is I can highlight it. If I click on it now and I hit the delete key on my keyboard, it also deletes it as well. Okay? So we're going to bring the image or the logo back onto the layout. Again, not necessarily, this may not necessarily be exactly where I want to place it, but just, for clarity, we're going to put it right here in the middle of this empty spot on our statement. You can pretty much, folks, put these fields anywhere you want on here. Okay? So we're basically saying we want to put a logo or an image on there, a picture, okay, onto our statement. So this logo or image function allows us to be able to add a picture or an image or a logo to the actual layout of the statement. And so once we've added that, we then have to browse for the picture or the image that we're wanting to add onto our statement. So how we notice here in the upper right hand corner, we've got our little right facing arrow up there. Let me again steer some focus right up here, little arrow right there. So if we click on that, let me get rid of my drawing tools here, and we click on that, it brings up picture box tasks. Okay, there's a number of things here. Things like data binding and image URL and data binding and things like that, anchor vertical. Those things we generally recommend leaving alone. There shouldn't be any need really to change any of those. The first and foremost thing is the image itself. It says none, notice. But just to the right of that, I got my little ellipsis or browse button that when I click on that, it opens up my browse window. And I can browse to the location of the image that I'm wanting. So I'm going to choose our pretty tulips here. And I click open. And notice now it populates with that image in the actual image or picture box. So we do have some flexibility here. One, I can resize it. So if I go, I want that a little larger, notice I can change the actual size by just dragging the corners or edges of the box larger or smaller. I think it does only go down to the original size. It won't go any. No, it will go smaller. Sorry, forgive me. So I can make it pretty tiny if I want. And if I click on the little arrow again, sizing, it defaults to zoom image, but say I want to put it, I want to fill it in. I would probably do stretch image. And there I go. I've just basically filled in the box with those tulips. Okay? That's that image. You want to play with that just to see, how it, play with it to make sure it displays the image that you're wanting. I've seen churches with statements where they put their church's logo or letterhead or something on there, or their denominational, logo, what have you. Okay? The other options that we have here are, like, just by way of example. Okay, I like my picture. It's really great. Now notice here I've got my border. Sorry, for which one is it? Border. Yeah, I think it's border. Yeah, so here I've got my border. So if I drag that image up here, this border option larger, I can actually place that and drop that around my actual image if I want. If I want to maybe draw a little focus to it, That looks pretty good. Okay? So I might be happy with that. Okay? If not, I can continue to manipulate it until I get it exactly where I'm wanting it or how I want it placed. Again, folks, you don't have to use any of this. I'm just letting you know it's here for you, that you can. Okay, I'm being asked, can you place the logo image above the organization name box? Well, sure, you can, Holly, but you have to create the real estate on the report or the statement to do that. So it would require moving, manipulating some of these things down. I mean, you might be able to put it in the page header. I've never tried, but I don't see why not. Again, you do only have so much. We only have so much real estate on the page, so we kind of always got to be cautious about that. But sure, if I go up here. Yeah, I can put it in there, but you again notice there's the red or magenta indicating that it's overlapping with something. So you do have to exert some caution on that. Okay, I can make the image pretty tiny, so you can put it up there. But if you're actually talking about in the detail section, you would have to manipulate and move some of these other things like organization name, organization address. And again, you can pick these things up and move them around. So you can do that. Okay. But we want to try to stay away from red or magenta on there if we can, because again, that generally implies an overlap on that. Okay? So yeah, again, things like size, image, things like that, we can we can change all that. Okay? Some other options, in addition to our borders and our image per se. You've got let's see here. What else do I have? An angle. So, if I go, some of these fields have an option called angle. So if I bring in something like label, like right here, it says click tab in the right corner to change. So it says here's my text. So if I go, okay, my test label. So I'm going to type that in there. And notice on my test label, I do have one called angle. So it literally means an angle. So if I want to put some text on here and I want to place it on an angle, I can say type in something like 25 to represent 25%. And now notice that when I have to expand the box to see it, but it's actually put whatever text in there at an angle. Okay? So it literally is, it is putting it in there. It is literally an angle. I've wondered for years what that was, and I learned about it and figured out it is literally an angle for the text that's being included in that. So if you see angle in there, that's telling you you can set that to an angle. Curiously, if I put in something like -25, what does it do? Does it go the other way? Indeed it does. So if I put in a negative amount in there, it flip-flops the angle from, lower left to upper right to upper left to lower right. I'm being asked, can you crop an image after you put it on the statement? I assume the answer to that, yes, Christy, is yes. I mean, the only Church Windows doesn't have any real imaging other than the resizing of the block itself that represents the image. So there's no real editing or cropping capability in Church Windows itself. But sure, as far as I'm aware, after you might have to go back in and reselect the image in here. But again, with our option to, to just simply go in and browse for the actual, new image, sure. I mean, once you've cropped it in whatever photo editing program you're doing, just come in and reselect the new resized or cropped image, and it'll just replace the other one. So, but yeah, that cropping or editing would not occur in Church Windows. We can, again, just change the size of the actual box. Okay? So, again, anything that has angle on that little, drop-down menu on the right allows us to be able to place the text on an angle for that. Okay? Again, nothing terribly challenging about this stuff. At the top of the screens, you do have some other rulers or bars and things like that. We're not going to get into any of that stuff because it's pretty rare that we use that. We do want to talk about some other types of adjustments. We've got about 10 minutes left here, so I've kind of got to get moving along. You can adjust fonts, of course, right up here at the very top of our statement designer here. So we've got our, defaults to TNR Times New Roman, 10 font, and you can change all that. So you can change it for one particular field if you're wanting. So if I go, I want to change my organization name, I just click on that. It draws the little box around it. I can now go up and say, okay, I want that to be Arial. And it's changed it for that one particular field. Okay? The other option I also have is, we're going to go back to Times New Roman again. I can select multiple fields by holding down my control key. So let's say I go, okay, I want to change my statement date range, my organization name, and my giver name and address. I've just randomly selected these three particular boxes. When I go up and change my font or my font size, I am essentially isolating just those three and making the changes to those three particular boxes. Okay? Those three particular fields. The other option that you have is that, now this is from one that folks frequently don't know, is I can also select multiples by simply going outside the boxes, again, dragging my arrow over here, and I just drag it down and draw a box around the ones that I want, and notice now it's selecting all of them. Okay? And now when I go up and I change my fonts or make my changes, it would be to all of those fields. At least it did. I did it before. I'm not sure why it's not doing it now. Let me see if I can do something. Maybe it's the image that... Yeah, it was something about how I'd selected it. The image wouldn't allow me to do that. So once I didn't deselected the image, I can now go up and change it, say, to, Calibri. And there it changed it for all of the fields that I selected. Okay? Can you use the arrows left and right, up and down to move image or other item? Sure. So if I do those, I can move the image using my up and down arrows or my left and right keys. There's another one too that's not quite so invasive. I'm sorry, and I'm having a struggling to remember what it is, folks. There's one that it does it in just increments on it. Forgive me, I'm having to find out which one that is. But yeah, see, this moves it in quarter inches. There's another one on here that allows us to do it in just literally fractions. This does it in bolder grid lines on that. Okay? I'm going to see if I can't remember what that was here before I wrap things up. But there's so much you can do with this, folks. So much to do. Okay? These are really now, what I'm going to show you now is really sort of the conclusion of this in terms of this. But you've really got to be willing to come in and play with this. That's one of the things that I strongly recommend, is that you've got to play. It's going to give you the option to, if you do something wrong, it's okay. You can always get back to your default windowed envelope format either way. Okay? So, as we talk about the actual statement itself, right here in the middle, we've got our detail section. So right here we go, it's called the detail section, detail report. This shows each one of the gifts that people have given, the dates, the amounts, check numbers if you have them entered. Down here is our account summary down here, the one just below that. And then even below that, then we now have our quarterly, monthly, and annual sections. So there's three parts, and those are all three controlled by these tabs across the top. This is the section that most folks are generally pretty familiar with on this, okay? So, if I want to edit these, I need to click on the respective tab. So if I go, okay, I don't want to show my account summary, I simply, let me get my drawings out of the way here, uncheck the little check mark on the show account summary box. I uncheck that. It removes that from the layout. Okay, systematically. It just takes it out. Okay? I have similar options for show detail and show quarterly section. The one I use a lot is the quarterly section. Folks go, oh, well, that's just really more informational. It's not very helpful for our members, and it adds a lot of extra printing to the statement. We're going to uncheck the quarterly section. So we uncheck that. one of the things that again is frequently overlooked is down in the lower left corner down here, we've got our designer button and our preview button. So you don't have to save this layout and look at your statements in order to be able to see if your changes are what you're wanting. If I simply click on the preview, it jumps over to a preview with dummy data on it that we have built in that allows you to see what your statement looks like. So here's my picture, here's my details section, my account summary, and notice no quarterly or monthly section. Okay? So I go, oh, it's not quite exactly what I'm wanting. I can just toggle back to my designer tab. Here I am. I can make changes to it just like I would normally. Okay? And again, toggling back and forth between the designer and the preview button will allow me to make the desired changes. Again, if I say edit account summary, there are some tabs here that we have to pay attention to. How do we want it to appear? Do we want to change the color of it? Do we want to change the font? Most commonly, we'll use columns here. So folks will call me and they'll say, hey, Josh, I want to take off the, we're not a pledging church. We want to take off the pledge information. So I can just leave account and amount given, and I can take off any of those columns that do not relate to the pledge, leaving just amount given and account pledged. Now when I click OK and I click Preview, under my account summary here below account detail, it shows just my giving account name. Let me show you with my highlighter what I'm talking about right here. Here's our account summary. So it shows the giving account with the amount given, and that's it. None of that other pledge information with the exception of the pledge ranges shows. Okay? That's it. Okay? You've got to play with this stuff. Here's some various options. You can print or change the page layout or what have you. You can zoom in on it. You can scroll to various pages, multiple page options on this. And this is the part that, again, I think is most important to sort of helping you feel more comfortable with working with this is, if I go, oh, I like my layout. I don't like the fact that my account summary is overlapping there, but we're going to see what we can do to get that fixed. There it is. Now when we go back to preview, it shouldn't be showing that over that line anymore. And sure enough, it's not. So we fixed that. Okay, so I like my layout now. When I go up to the upper right and click X or I click Save As, it's going to open up and require that I enter a name for my new layout, essentially. Okay, if I try to click Yes through my windowed envelope, it's going to bark at me. It's going to show me this red dot saying, hey, you cannot overwrite this file. That means simply you will always have the windowed envelope or the hard-coded ones that we've created to fall back on. So I have to give this a new name. Okay? And so I'm going to call this one, my windowed envelope. Okay? You can call it whatever you want. You just can't leave it as the original name. Okay? So now I click Yes, and it saved it. And notice here now under my statement layout menu in the top, it's now choosing my new layout for me by default. Okay? You always just have to pay attention, though, to the statement that you're selecting. Somebody else may have come in here and chosen another one and changed it. And so if it's not showing the one you want, you'll have to click the down arrow here. Let me get back to my regular drawing tool. Click the down arrow and choose the appropriate layout you want, okay? Because somebody else may have been in here and kind of played around with that. You can always go back to the default. So you're never going to overwrite the one that we put in there. So if you go, oh, I want to scrap the one I've got, you can just delete it and then go in and go back into your windowed envelope and go back to square one again, where you have the basic windowed envelope format that you started with, okay, the one that we built into the software for you, okay? There's a lot of flexibility, folks. Even a half an hour at this point wasn't really enough for us to cover the whole entire topic of the statement designer. There's simply not enough time. But what I hope it's given you is the feeling of confidence that you have to go in here and dive in and play with some of this stuff, knowing that you can always get back to that basic windowed envelope I've seen users who have created 2 or 3 or 4 different layouts and saved them with different names to give themselves, a couple different places where they could go back to, and different statements that they've created for their church. Okay, you can't overwrite those originals. You have lots of room and flexibility here to play with this and feel confident with it. Okay. All right, so let me look and see. It looks like we got a number of questions come in here. Yeah, Christy, I'm sorry. I'm still trying to find out that I'm trying to remember that key that it's allowing us to use the up in where we in the statement designer where it does it in just incremental, not under like 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch is where it is, and it's not. It's lost in my thinking. I'm sorry. Call me on support. I'll see what if I can't do to find that. Don't use pledging. Yeah, Barbara, I covered that. How to eliminate that. Oh, you did say I answered it for you. Can we delete some of the preset boxes, i.e. giver number? Sure, of course, Holly. Yeah, if I come into this statement layout, I can go up here and go, okay, I don't want to include the giver number. I just highlight those fields and either click the little arrow. Well, I have to use the delete key on my keyboard there. They don't have the delete option, but there it is. I've just removed those. So yeah, any of this information on here can be removed or deleted. Things that are preset or hard-coded, I would encourage you, like the detail or the account summary or the quarterly section, I would use the show or hide function up here rather than deleting them per se. Okay, I wouldn't delete those, but certainly any of the other information fields that you have that you don't want to include, definitely feel free to remove those. I missed how you got to step 2. All right, Ramona. Yeah, so basically it always goes back to the square one where when you go to donation statement, it always opens up step 1 for, allowing us to choose who you want to include on our donation statement. And when we go to next, it just systematically takes us to steps 2, which is, what statement are we printing? Are we emailing them? What are we including on our statement? What have you? Let's see. Second part of that question is, can we change the margin size? It would be done here at the statement designer if you did, but yeah, I mean, sure. If you click, if you notice I'm hovering over the margins over here, I can drag those and change those. So sure. Should be able to change those, but again, you have to be cautious because again, you might be creating, some magenta, red. We don't like that. That's, something's going to be outside of the printable area or might be potentially overlapping. So you do have to exert some caution around that. Again, use your preview button, send it to your printer, make sure your layout's good before you save it. Okay. Yes, folks, sometimes these calls, if you're having particular problems with your setup, we're going to encourage you on the webinar here to call technical support so we can have our technicians can have you answer questions about your particular setup and your data. Sometimes those questions are hard to answer here on the webinar when we're not able to talk to you about your setup. Would the key be greater or lesser than? It could be, Susan. I'm sorry, I don't know. That's why. Would be, could be. It's not working there. I'm sorry. Again, I'm sorry. I'm at a loss in terms of what those are. I don't want to. Oh, I deleted it. Oh well. The image. I know it's here. I'm just not remembering what it is. I'm so sorry, folks. Where you can move it in incremental amounts. Oh yeah, you went to option instead. You're welcome, of course. Okay, well I'm sorry, I'm still trying to think of this, folks, because I know it's on here, and it's escaping me in my thinking where that is. There is a way. If it comes to mind, I'll definitely do it. I'll definitely update the document on it, folks, on there. But you see, it's moving it in, 1/8 and 1/4 inch blocks. There's a way where you can do it in fewer blocks on that, and that's just what I'm losing on here. Okay, well, I'm not going to spend the rest of the time looking for that on there, but there definitely is. Contact technical support on that. But you can either way, you can use drag and drop to kind of move them up a little bit at a time too. But okay, great. So it's about 5 minutes longer than we had anticipated, folks. I'm so sorry. We went over on this. Again, look for the video on the website. Again, we hope this has been helpful, and look for this on our website soon. And I'll go ahead and end the webinar for everybody, and we'll look forward to seeing you at another Church Windows webinar. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye-bye.